Hi there, Katie. Could you introduce yourself for people at home, please?
Absolutely. My name's Katie Jones. I am the founder of One Room Education, and we are on a mission to empower parents, students, and educators to take back control of their education to help foster the most free and prosperous generation yet, not just in the US, but around the world. And I'm also a 10-year stay-at-home wife and a 4-year stay-at-home mom and second generation homeschooler and certified secondary social studies educator.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Could you tell me, so were you home educated yourself, Katie?
I was K through 8, so kindergarten through what we call eighth grade. That's right around 12 years old. And then I was we call it mainstreaming for public high school, which is the typical trajectory for most homeschoolers here in the US, because parents are super comfortable with like I can teach my kid the ABCs and one, two, threes and like all that stuff. But when it gets into the higher level courses, especially when I was homeschooled in the 1990s, there weren't a lot of affordable resources that were available to people, especially like us that lived out in the country in the middle of nowhere, right? So it's very typical even today with all the resources that we have to mainstream kids for high school. Uh, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons
And
that is.
presumably that means that you've got access to qualifications and examinations that way as well.
Yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier, especially if the kid is on a college bound trajectory, because there's a lot, the number one question that I see in the homeschooling groups online, aside from how do I do this, is how do we create a transcript for our homeschooled kid for college?
Yeah.
And I know I'm in contact personally with some groups here in the US that are working that you can have an entry that are working to implement on a wider scale entrance exams as opposed to transcript entries, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's we're working towards that.
And are you finding the local authorities are supportive of what you're doing?
For the most part, so in the US, it's a little bit different than it is in the UK. You and I have discussed this off camera a little bit. So in the US, every single state is in charge of their own education system. So we have the federal Department of Education, but it really has little to do with the day-to-day operations of the individual school districts. So the individual typically how it goes. There are some states that are an exception to this, but in general, the way that it goes is the State Department of Education sets the rules for homeschooling, so what you're required to submit to the state, if anything. And then your local school district has most of the power of approving or disapproving what your curriculum is because, we need to make sure that they have a rigorous education. So the most the most homeschooler friendly state, I believe, is Illinois. Yeah, because Chicago's there. Yeah, Illinois. And they require nothing except for a notice that you're going to homeschool your kid. Other than that, they require no check-ins. They require nothing. So I believe they do require the third grade state exam and maybe the high school exam. But other than that, there's no actual requirements. So I live in Ohio. And Ohio requires us to submit a letter of intention to our local superintendent, our local school, that we are going to homeschool our kids. Once you submit that letter of intention, you don't have to do it again. And you submit. Now, I haven't been through this yet, personally, but I do have people that I'm in contact with. There's a huge homeschooling community here. It's very homeschooler friendly. So theoretically, what we're supposed to do according to the law is submit a curriculum outline. And they say they approve it. The superintendent will say, good, and they check it off, and you're good to go, and you never have to see them again until the following year when you submit your next curriculum. And the only thing that you're required to If there's any questions, the only thing you're required to do is submit proof of progress. So the easiest way to do that is you give the child so my son is 4, and so I would give him a letter number color shape recognition sheet, right? And he would go through and he would do it. And then at the end of the year, I would give him that same sheet again. And if he did better, then that's proof of progress. And they
Yeah.
cannot question my homeschool after that.
Yeah.
I grew up in Pennsylvania. I'm literally on the state border. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I live in Ohio. And in Pennsylvania, they require something called a portfolio review every year. So you don't have to submit a curriculum, but you do have to have a portfolio of projects and tests and stuff like that that you submit to a state certified portfolio evaluator, and they must review the portfolio for proof of progress. Again, it's that proof of progress,
Yeah.
not like rigor of they're not looking for rigor or specific subjects that you're covering. It's just proof of progress in the topics that you are choosing to teach in your homeschool. Um,
Would that be annually?
yeah, that's annually, at the end of the school year, not the
Yeah.
calendar year. And you do have, and I stress this to everyone in the US. I don't know if it's the same way in the UK. You can tell me. You have a full calendar year to get your 180 days of education in. So your direct instruction, you're supposed to have 180 days everywhere in the US of what they call direct instruction. So that's time that you sit down and you focus specifically on schoolwork instead
Okay.
of just like going out to the crick and playing and talking about, oh, there's um oh my gosh, what's the little frogs called? Tadpoles. Oh my gosh, there's that's my brain. Oh my gosh, there's tadpoles. Wonder what they're gonna do. There's frogs here too. How do those work? So you talk about life cycles and ecosystems and all that stuff by going out and playing. But does that count as direct instruction according to your state? Well, you need to know your state laws.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how it works. It's really laid back in most states. There are some states that require you to have some sort of degree in education
Right.
to homeschool or home educate. There are national organizations that are actively fighting against that. I know I live in the tri-state area, so Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio are our tri-state tri-state right here. So West Virginia, their only requirement to homeschool is that you have 2 grades above the one that you're teaching, because they used to have such a low high school graduation rate. So as long as you had 2 grades above, so if you dropped out of high school in 10th grade, you could homeschool your kid legally through 8th grade, and then you would mainstream them for the high school.
Right.
So it's really interesting that way. Ohio doesn't have any restrictions on so far as education of the parent goes, and neither does Pennsylvania. Those are the only ones that
Could you,
I have
yeah,
intimate knowledge of.
can you circumnavigate that with getting tutors in?
Y- Uh, depends.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Depends on
probably,
the state and
yeah,
depends on the person that is reviewing your
yeah,
homeschool. If the state requires you to have some sort of certification to be a legal homeschooler, which legal homeschooler is another discussion altogether, I feel like. Whether home education is part of of the human right of education that they're just trying to legislate, or we could get into that whole debate. That's up to you. But if you are in a state that requires you to have some sort of certification to be a legal homeschooler, then typically there is some sort of more rigorous review of your curriculum or end of year evaluations. So sometimes it depends on how much money you have, really, to get a good
yeah,
evaluator
yeah,
as to whether they will say, okay, well, I have a tutor that's
yeah,
doing this and the tutor is certified. It depends on the evaluator. That's the only real answer
yeah.
I can give you.
And
Some allow it, some don't.
what happens if you get a particularly nasty person who is completely against home education and decides that your provision isn't suitable? What happens then?
Take them to court or threaten to turn them into the state for violating state regulations. You have, so it is so important. And I say this to everyone. It is so important that you are familiar with it as a citizen of the United States in general. It is your job to know the laws.
Yeah,
You cannot count on the police to know the laws. You cannot count on your legislators to know the laws that have already been passed. Your job as a citizen is to be informed,
yeah,
at least in the US.
yeah,
It's our job to do that. And that's not being taught in public school anymore. We're taught to trust the authority.
that's right.
Everybody understands that Google knows best, and so does the teacher or whoever is in charge. And we're supposed to just sit down and shut up, which I'm so sorry. We're American and we don't do that well.
Good for you.
And I am from the country and we really don't do that well. Um, but so you have to know your laws,
Yeah,
especially if you're going to homeschool. You have to know what the regulations are. And if somebody tries, so quick story time. This actually happened to my mom when she was homeschooling us. We were part of the first or second year that homeschooling was actually legal in Pennsylvania in 1990. Okay. It was the first year that that homeschooling was legal on a statewide basis in Pennsylvania. Is that not insane? Let's just start there. But whenever it came around to portfolio evaluation, my mom vetted those portfolio evaluators extremely rigorously because she was told by other people, like the people that fought for and got homeschooling approved in in Pennsylvania. Those were my mom's mentors. So we actually went and we interviewed a lot of portfolio evaluators that were newly minted back then. And some of them were saying, oh, well, you need to have times in the days, like the date and the time of direct instruction. And you need to have the books that you are using for curriculum written down, and you need to do blah, 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 like you would if you were a public school teacher working on your lesson plans, essentially, is what it was. And my mom was like, that's not what the law says, though. So my mom ended up finding this amazing portfolio evaluator who was a school administrator. And she said, you are required to mark that you have done 180 days. So what my mom did was she had a sheet that was labeled 1 through 180, and she crossed off the days. There was no requirement to tell what date it was. There was no requirement to tell what times. There was none of that. There was a requirement to track that you have done 180 days of direct instruction. No other requirements so far as record keeping goes. Then so far as the progress, they were wanting to see like a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't required by law. And our our portfolio evaluator is amazing. We ended up having like picnics with her and her kids every year, and it was just like this big thing that was fun for everybody instead of like really stressful like it could have been. Like, are the kids going to pass this grade or aren't they? And this person holds the future of your homeschool in their hands. And she told my mom, she was like, anybody that asks you for one thing past this, turn them into the State Board of Education and tell them to go screw themselves because they're violating state law and they are on a power trip. And you guys don't deserve that. You're just trying to give your kids a good education. And that's what my mom did.
So fast forward to today, will your local authority provide you with that information of precisely what it is they're looking for and what their legal rights are? Are you do you feel like you're well informed to do the home education where you are?
I mean, I am. I'm
Yeah, you clearly are.
so that's a little unfair. So I'm a second generation homeschooler who's also a state certified educator. So I know how to find the information. So I
Yeah,
feel
but
like that's a little unfair
yeah, the
on
average
that way.
person.
But
Yeah,
yeah, the average person, typically how it goes. is you decide that you want to be a that you need to pull your kid out, and you get on Google and you do a search for how
Yeah.
to do it. Or you get on Facebook and you search for a homeschooling group in your state or in your area. And
Yeah.
then you ask for help. You ask for help to get started. But the number one thing is that you need to get on your state board of education website and in the search bar type in homeschooling regulations.
Yeah.
It will bring up the direct requirements that the state is looking for.
Yeah.
Anything above and beyond, the school districts are not allowed in the state of Ohio and most states. The individual school districts are not allowed to impose further regulation on you. It is the state requirements that they must adhere to. And if a school has been imposing other non-state mandated regulations, you can turn them into the State Board of Education and have like a whole case file open, and it's like a whole deal for them. And they want to avoid that. So if
Yeah.
you let them know that you know that that's the procedure, they will back down real quick
Yeah.
because they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of action for recourse here, especially in Ohio and Pennsylvania also because I have nieces and nephews in Pennsylvania, so I'm always updating people on what's going on with those ones too. But it's it's really pretty it's really pretty simple.
And if you got into difficulty, you could find other like-minded home educators
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah, for sure.
get some advice from them of what
Oh
to do
yeah.
and where to go and yeah, the right
It's
course.
really easy to find homeschoolers around here. You go
Yeah.
to the library or the park during school hours,
Yeah. And you
and
find
anyone that's there is a homeschool kid.
yeah, it's fantastic. Have you noticed it's growing in numbers or decreasing or staying the same from when you were learning as a child?
Oh, when I was a little when I was a little kid, it was all of the stereotypes, right? What about socialization? Are you equipped to even teach your kid any of that stuff? Uh, we went to my parents worked second and third shift, so that's afternoon and night shift. And so we would be at the laundry at 24-hour laundromat at like 2 a.m. right, doing our laundry. That was not abnormal for my family to be barbecuing at midnight because that was just our family's schedule. And I remember the one time a police officer stopped at the laundromat and asked my mom what she was doing with two little kids out that late. And she told him where he could get off. I come from some spicy people, little
Good. Yeah,
spunky
good stuff.
people. But it was very taboo when I was growing up to be homeschooled. There
Okay.
was a decent sized community because of the devout religious community that is in my general area. Um, so I mean there was a strong knit community, but it wasn't very big. Now it is a badge of pride that you homeschool your kids. And people ask my son, "Oh, where are you going to preschool yet?" And he just looks at me and I'm like, "I do his preschool." And they're like, "Good for you." And like they're so excited to hear that somebody's homeschooling. And that is so weird to me. Like it makes me happy and excited, but it's weird.
Yeah.
So people are really excited about it, and especially after 2020, 2021, 2022.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, that whole time period. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Um, People are so awake to the lackings
Yeah.
of the public education system. I'm pretty sure in the entire Western world, not just the US. I think that backfired very severely on the powers that be. And I think that it did there's two camps that came out of that whole situation. The first camp is homeschooling sucks, and why would anyone ever want to do that? I had to homeschool during the pandemic, and I would never do that again. One, that wasn't homeschooling in any way, shape, or form. That was the government freaking out and trying to convince you that that's what homeschooling was so that you wouldn't try it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You agree? Yeah.
There's that. The other side says my kids aren't learning anything. Those kids are bad as hell. And why would I let my kids continue to be in a class with them? That's where all my kids' bad behaviors are coming from. I'm just going to bring them home. I'm pretty sure that I can teach the crap that I saw them trying to teach them, anyways, and do it better.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
pretty much the two camps that came out of that.
Yeah.
And it's been really great to see the parents, the parents of the younger kids, especially because I mean, I teach secondary school, so that's grades 6 through, I'm certified to teach grades 7 through 12, but I can teach 6 and then up as high as I want. I've worked with people working on their doctoral theses. So like I help everybody, but the older kids are much harder to help because they have ideas kind of cemented in their brain a little bit already, and it takes a lot more time to break down those walls and break down those ideas and those theories that they've been taught about literally pick a subject, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can, they're obviously able to be helped. I've done
Yeah.
it a lot. Like you can, it doesn't take
It's
too long, but it takes a lot more
deprogramming.
effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can get to the parents of the smaller children, of the smaller kids, early primary to mid primary, I would say is probably the best time to start homeschooling, because it's the easiest transition with with the least pushback from the kids. Um, and you know, if you want to do the older kids, then you have to sit down and hope that you raised a rational human being that you can say, these are all the reasons that we're doing this, and I expect you to just do it and not fight me on it. Here are the
Mm.
times that you'll be able to see your friends. Do you even get to chill with your friends at school? No, you get to see them in the hall and high five them and then go to class. And if you try to talk to them during class that you're supposed to be socializing in, you get yelled at or reprimanded in some other way because you talk too much. So, but we're worried about them being socialized properly. But, you know, whatever.
Have you, do you get any financial support or help when you home educate?
Not typically. So, this is an evolving topic in the US currently. So, typically, if you choose to homeschool, it is on your dime. You're choosing to do that. Your child has a free education option. And if you choose to not take that, then the bill's on you, which I get. Totally get that. And I do want to say that the average cost of homeschooling your kid is less than $500 a year. That includes K through high school. I have been preschooling our son for like 2 years now, and we have spent a total of like $300, and that's because I buy way too many books. That's on me. That that's not like requirements for him to be kindergarten ready, right? So it is extremely affordable, especially with online resources. You can do it for virtually free. So it all depends on what you do, how you want to set up your homeschool. It depends on how many supplemental. If you want a buy ready to go curriculum, you're going to spend a lot more money than if you're willing to build it yourself from online resources and libraries, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
all up to you how much time you want to put into the prep for it and all of that stuff. So typical amount is like $500 nationwide for a year of homeschooling,
Okay.
which is like so cheap. Oh my God. We waste more money
Yeah.
like buying Starbucks
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
6 months. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So is your kid's future and the future of your nation and your world, because that's really what our kids are. They're not just our kids and our family's future. They're the future of the world. Is the future of the world in your kid worth giving up Starbucks for a couple months? I think it is, but I mean, you know, I'm not the normal person, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but so that's the typical amount. There is a very interesting, we'll call it interesting, discussion going on in the US currently about education. Um, what are they calling them? ESAs, educational savings accounts. Hold on a second, I got a cough. Sorry. It's allergy season for us here. One of the allergy, let's be honest, all 4 seasons are allergy season. So the educational savings accounts are the idea that, and I'm sure that you probably heard this on the news for the US if you follow education news in the US at all, that the money follows the kid for education. That's what this is. Okay. So what it is a savings account that the state has with your kid's name on it. And you tap into that money to help with your child's education. So if you send them to public school, that money with your kid's name gets released to the public school. If you choose to send your kid to a private school, then that money gets released to the private school, and then you're responsible for the difference.
Yeah.
And then here's where it's getting a little dicey. Okay, so those two make total sense, right? If you homeschool your kid and you choose to tap into those funds, then, I mean, obviously, typically the average that a public school, so it's going to be the average that the public school spends on your student per student. So it would be roughly like $13,000, between $10 and $13,000 that your student would be eligible for towards their education. So if you're a homeschooler and you're spending $500 a year, then your entire homeschool budget would be covered by the state that you're already paying taxes to. So you already paid it, but you're just getting the money back instead of having to pay for school twice, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Here's the major concern. The more funds that you accept from the government in any form, the more they have a say in your daily life. Now, this is a big, huge debate in the homeschooling community right now, and it kind of has us at each other's throats here in the US because Trump, God bless him, keep him safe. Trump was floating these educational savings accounts on a national basis. Now, what that means here in the US is that he would direct the federal Department of Education to lobby the state Department of Education to start this program. The federal Department of Education does not have the power to impose this on a national basis. They have to lobby the state governments, which is why everything takes so long to happen here in the US. You know what I mean? So if that would happen, if they would be able to convince all 50 states to start these education savings accounts for all of the students that homeschoolers would be eligible to tap into, because they could start them and say that you could only use them for private school and public school, and that homeschoolers wouldn't be eligible for them. You know, that's a little unfair. But if if they say that homeschoolers are eligible, then what other sorts of regulations would they be able to impose on each individual homeschool? Would they be able, would certain homeschoolers be allowed to unschool anymore? Would certain homeschools be allowed to wild school anymore? So that's like the fringes of homeschooling, right? Well, like the forest schools are really cool, but like the homeschools that just kind of let their kids run wild and they'll learn to read when they feel like it and they'll learn math whenever they're ready and all that stuff. The really unstructured ones, w- would there be would there be regulations imposed
Yeah.
on them if they accept this money? What's tied to the money?
Yeah.
And that's we're very skeptical here in the US of the government.
Yeah.
What are you trying to get us to do that we're not going to do willingly that you're going to tie our kids' money to?
That's right. Yeah.
So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
but it's a little sticky right now. Currently in the beginning of 2025, there are a couple of states, like two or three states that have the educational savings funds, savings accounts, savings funds. They're the same thing. That homeschoolers are eligible for, but it is not available on a national basis. I
Okay.
guess is the simple answer.
Yeah, yeah. In the UK, we have it's the same. we have no financial support, but that allows you the freedom to not be
Hmm.
beholden to their rules and regulations. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so there's a lot of a lot to be grateful for, even though you would quite like to have the cash back as well.
Right. And that's one of the things that I find with homeschoolers in general is we just kind of don't like to be told what to do with our kids, no matter where you're from. Like we as parents innately know what's best for our kids. If we're homeschooling, we're able to figure out the way that they learn best and help them adapt to other ways of learning and in easing sort of method instead of throwing them in the deep end and saying sink or swim kid and then being mad because they're not passing a course that's being
Yeah,
taught by a teacher that they don't like their personalities fundamentally
yeah.
clash. You know what I mean? There are so many benefits to homeschooling that people don't even realize, and I love talking about that stuff. But yeah, so
Could you tell me a little bit more about what you do at One Room Education?
absolutely. So one room education is evolving just like just like everything else. So it started off as the State of Education podcast and the One Room blog, where I just wanted to get information out to parents during 2021, 2022, because everybody was asking for, what are the pros and cons of homeschooling? How do I get started? How do I find my state regulations? How do we do all this stuff? How do I decide if it's the right choice to pull my high schooler out? They only have a couple more years, you know what I mean? And they're looking for these answers, but all that was available online was homeschool your kid or you're the worst parent in the world and you want to see them indoctrinated into everything and become like a sheep, right? Or don't homeschool your kid. They're going to be weird and antisocial and you're probably going to want to lock them in a basement and you don't support teachers, right? There wasn't really an in between with a non-bias pro con. Here's what the situation actually is. Here's some of the actual reasons that you might want to pull your kid out. Here's some reasons you might want to leave them in. And either one is okay. There's options in the middle too. Did you know about those options? Like just giving people information on the gradual progression that you can have. You don't just have to jump straight into homeschooling. You you can have a gradual progression there. You can kind of wean yourself off of public education nowadays in the US. So I wanted to get that information to parents as quickly as possible. So I started One Room Education with the blog and the podcast. Then I got really overwhelmed and I took almost a year off. Sorry, between late 2023 and mid 2024. And I started it back up with some help from a few friends. And we have the blog is back up. The podcast, I'm going through our backlog and getting those put up as quickly as I can with a 4-year-old and a husband's crazy work schedule here in the US currently. Um, so I'm working on getting that stuff up. But what I'm really excited about is that we launched something called the One Room Classroom. We're offering original courses, all only original courses that are exclusive to One Room Education. And I have partnered with some absolutely amazing people. Oh my gosh. So I am teaching some of the courses myself. One of the live courses right now is a note-taking 101 course that teaches you the main note-taking styles and strategies, when to use them, when not to use them, which is the important part. And the final the final lesson in that course is how to create a hybrid method that works for you in whatever situation you're in. So it's a customizable note-taking strategy that can evolve with you no matter what your situation is. I have used this with everyone from fourth graders through presidents of multi-million dollar international corporations. This exact lesson plan I've used with that range of people.
Okay.
And It's available at one-roomeducation.com if you're interested in that. So I'm working on a foundations of education. So it's going to be a note-taking 101, study strategies 101, and research strategies 101. I'm working on those. We also have a Bill of Rights 101. So it's the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. That's live right now. We also have, I'm finishing up the back end stuff for it, but it's a project-based learning course specifically for parents. It is everything. It'll work for everyone from one kid at your kitchen table clear up through working with pods and co-ops. So how to scale it also. And this is I'm so excited about this one. It is created by an assessment specialist, a nationally renowned assessment specialist, and a publicly certified secondary teacher who works with special ed and uh, math and science. That's not really important. But she also, in addition to being a practicing public educator, she also homeschooled five of her own kids. So that's who's teaching this project-based learning course. And we're building an entire framework on one room education that is homeschooler professional development is what we're calling it. And anyone that is shaky on whether they have the skills and the knowledge and the ability to teach, that's fine. We'll help you with that. That will no longer be a barrier because
Yeah.
I am a publicly certified, classically trained educator. And I've hooked up with some great, amazing publicly certified, classically trained educators that want to teach you how to do what we do in an approachable manner that will actually be able to work for you in your homeschool. So
Brilliant.
we're breaking all of that down.
Yeah.
It's taking us a little bit. We're working on it, but we're slowly rolling those out and getting those done as fast as we can. But those are all available over on the website, and we're working on that. Plus, I launched by popular demand a homeschool coaching program to help get people ready and set up for their homeschool. It's called the Foundations for Homeschool Mastery program, and it's a 12-week interactive course that I teach personally. You get weekly meetings with me, a dedicated Discord server where you can get a hold of me. There's I think it's almost 60 pages now, workbook. It just keeps expanding because, I'm never done with anything that I created from my own mind to help you get set up. And it has everything from budgeting to why you're actually wanting to do it, lesson planning, yearly planning, tracking, your mental health, your kids' mental health, social planning, for socialization, of course, because that's everyone's number one concern. Um,
Mm.
it has literally everything that you need, including year-end reviews and evaluations, how to do that, quarterly evaluations for your students, all those things.
I love that people can actually get hold of you personally as well for
Yeah, absolutely.
that reassurance and that personal tailored response and yeah, empowering parents and just giving them that reassurance that yes, you can do it and this is one of the ways that you can achieve it. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Really, really good.
And side note with the homeschool mastery program, the coaching program, you also get access to the one room classroom, the entire catalog, even as it expands. So you can really tap into all of that homeschooler professional development or any of the courses that you want to see kind of what we're doing and how we're doing it.
That's
So
brilliant. Oh, that's really
thank
good,
you.
Katie.
Thank you. I'm
Um,
very excited about it.
Yeah, well, you should be. It sounds like you've put a heck of a lot of work into it. But when you've had such a positive experience and you know so much about something that other people think is alien and they couldn't possibly do it, you do want to share that knowledge with people and to let them know that there are other options available. And
Absolutely.
like you say, it doesn't mean that you're demonizing the people that choose to send their children to school. It is just another way of educating your children should you choose to do that and that you're in a position to do it as well.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we focus on with One Room is not demonizing one group or the other. Because my brother, my brother that was in the same house as me, do you ever wonder how siblings
Mm.
that grow up the same end up so different sometimes,
Yeah.
yet so the same. Anyways, but he decided his kids have been mainstream the whole time. They went to preschool. They went to church preschool, so I guess that doesn't really count. But they went to preschool and now they're going to public school. My brother works in a public school as an athletic trainer, and he is up their butts. 20, like the
Right.
school board changed their meeting rules because of my brother. Okay. All the stuff that I mentioned about homeschoolers needing to know the laws and how I know how to
Mm.
find all that stuff with or without a computer, my brother grew up the same way. He grew up seeing my parents do that too. And he's just taking that knowledge and implementing it in the public sphere. And they hate him. Like
Yeah.
he ran for school board, everything. They hate him.
Yeah.
So I have a vested interest to make sure that I'm trying to work with the public education system or people that are trying to reform the public education system as much as possible because my nieces and
That's right.
nephews are all involved in that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
And
the children that your children are going to interact with and have relationships in the future, those are those children, and you want them to be all right too.
absolutely. So anyone that is a homeschool advocate, I hope that we all approach it in a way that is accepting and not alienating or demonizing of people that send their kids to school, whether it's a private school or a public school, because people have their reasons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're not in their homes. We don't understand
Mm.
what's going on. And same as they're not with us and they shouldn't be demonizing us for our choices with our families. So one of the things that I try to do with the podcast, The State of Education, is I try to have actionable things that you can do at the end of it. So I present the issue, get you all fired up and think that the world's going to end and why should we even bother? And then I tell you how you can actually take steps to make things better, whether you're a parent or whether you're just a community member that wants a better future for your community. How can you get involved and what are things that you can do today or this week to start to make things better? So, whether you're homeschooling or whether you're not. So,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I focus on a lot is community building, family building, rebuilding those bonds, parenting, which I know sounds a little bit funny to people that aren't homeschoolers. Like, why would a education podcast or an education website be talking about parenting? Parenting is the foundation of any sort of education. It is. The family dynamics are how the kids see the world and how they're able to receive information best. So making sure that those things are strong are fundamentally necessary to a good education. Whether you're private schooling, public schooling, homeschooling, it doesn't really matter. And then
Mm.
after you work on that, then you work on the community building and community outreach and state building, nation building. You know, it just kind of keeps going and going and going
Yeah.
till
Yeah.
you build the world that you really want to see.
That's fantastic, Katie. Really inspirational stuff.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd possibly want to add before we wrap up?
Home education is not the mammoth undertaking that most people think it's going to be. We have been conditioned to think that you must have your 5-year-old sit for 8 hours a day with a 30-minute break if you're lucky. If they behaved, they can squirm for 30 minutes. We've been conditioned that that's normal. And I highly suggest that anyone that is worried about being able to homeschool does two things. One, you look into the foundation of the modern public education system or the modern education system in general. Um, I, of course, I, of course, have articles and podcasts about that over on one-roomeducation.com. They're amazing articles and references, but all of the articles on One Room Education have a resource or reference section so you can do a deeper dive. They're all of our references, all of our resources that we use to create the articles, and so that you can look into the information yourself to see how our biases are. because I'm a historian, I'm a history teacher, and firsthand accounts and original documents are extremely important whenever you're researching history. So I find that extremely important when I'm looking at people's opinions of things. So I made sure that's included in all of the like historical articles on the website. So all of that stuff is there. If you don't use us, that's totally fine too. But look into the foundation of the Prussian education model. That's what it's actually called, is the Prussian education model. I call it the factory model of education or the industrial model of education. And I want you to look into what happened, reading, literacy, mathematical understanding. We do have these statistics. What it looked like before the Prussian model of education was implemented worldwide, and the opportunities and the actual equity and social mobility that was available before and after its implementation. And then
Okay.
tell me whether you think that homeschooling is a worthy undertaking or not. And it should scare you, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you if you're not ready to dive in full force, like both feet head first into the deep end of
Mhm.
homeschooling, that's fine. If you just want to talk, I'm available for, I call them 15-minute virtual coffees. Let's chat. Let's see where you are. If you do stuff with me, awesome. If you don't, that's amazing too. And I hope that you get some information that can help your kid. So
That's really wonderful, Katie. And I hope that as many people that need to see this do and reach out to you because you're doing some really great work.
thank you very much. You're amazing. And I love talking with you every time we're together. So thank you
Oh, it's
very
good
much
to
for
see
having
you.
me.
Take care.